Russia welcomes Canada back to the world stage. I'm Brian Lilly with the Rebel.media. You can be known by your friends, you can be known by your enemies. I have to say, I'm not sure how I feel about Russia, the country that invaded Ukraine, took Crimea, continues to arm and supply so-called rebels in eastern Ukraine. I'm not sure how I feel about them welcoming Canada back to the world stage, but there was Russia's ambassador appearing on Global's West Block this past weekend saying, hey, Canada's back!
We're very encouraged that we now have a window of opportunity to restart Russian-Canadian dialogue, with Canadian foreign policy shifting from self-isolation to engagement, to a stronger and more constructive voice of Canada on the international arena.
Really? Canada has been isolated until Justin Trudeau took over? Self-isolation? I don't think so. Canada's been on the opposite side of Russia, especially on Ukraine, but Canada has not been isolated, was not isolated under the Harper government. But you're not going to hear that from the media party. In fact, you didn't hear that from Global. That statement was just allowed to stand. It was the same last week when Global Affairs Minister Stephane Dion took to the microphone and declared that, well, he wanted to engage with Russia while the former government, the Harper government, never did.
Look, Canada was speaking to the Russians even at the tough times of the Cold War. And now we are not speaking, almost not, because of the former policy of the former government. In which way it's helping Ukraine? In which way it's helping our interest in the Arctic?
The Arctic. Here's something funny. Here's something odd, something that the Russian ambassador mentioned in his interview with Global's West Block that wasn't picked up by the show's host, wasn't mentioned by the media party. Canada hosted a meeting on the Arctic last April under the old Harper government. Guess what? Russia was there. They sent diplomatic representatives and they agreed and backed us on a key issue.
So I should remind you that last year Canada hosted Arctic Council Ministerial, and we supported the Canadian initiative to establish Arctic Economic Council. This is a very promising venue of cooperation.
But don't worry, we don't talk to Russia. Harper cut them off. The fact is, the Harper government, well, under them, Canada took a tough diplomatic stand against Russia over the theft of Crimea, the ongoing invasion of eastern Ukraine. And that included Stephen Harper bluntly telling Vladimir Putin to get out of Ukraine. It involved joining with our allies, imposing sanctions. It involved joining with our allies in a military training mission to assist Ukrainian forces. But now Russia's welcoming Canada back from our supposed self-isolation, and the media party isn't questioning this. They're accepting the Russian narrative. It's just like the Cold War's back, and the media once again is on the side of the Russians. We shouldn't be happy that countries like Russia and Iran are pleased with Canada's new foreign policy. These countries are not our friends. We should be suspicious of them at every turn. Both countries are supporting the Assad regime in Syria. Russia supplies and arms rebels in Ukraine. They both undermine democracies on their borders. Iran supplies and funds terrorists, and yet these are the two countries now happy with Canada's new foreign policy. Like I said, you can be known by your friends or your enemies. I don't want these countries as friends of Canada. You shouldn't either. Canada should have a principle-based foreign policy. We should look out for our own national interest. We should work with our allies. We should support our friends, in particular democracies or emerging democracies like Ukraine, like Israel. Instead, what are we doing now? We're moving closer to Russia and Iran, with nothing to show for those moves other than making it clear to our allies that they no longer have Canada's full backing.